I'm destroyed when I hear myself on a playback or on the screen.
You think you know how the West was won as the sprawling epic that captured America's frontier saga on the biggest screen ever devised. But the real pioneering adventure was surviving the production itself. Behind the three-panel Cinerama spectacle and parade of Hollywood legends were three directors battling for control, actors risking death in raging rivers without modern safety equipment, and a technical format so impossibly complex it would be obsolete before the film even premiered. What you're about to discover will astound you. Debbie Reynolds nearly drowning while trapped underwater in authentic rapids, a stunt coordinator killed during the most dangerous sequence, and a revolutionary three-camera system that created a masterpiece nobody can properly watch today. The West was fiction, but the chaos, danger, and technical insanity were devastatingly real. The Cinerama revolution and technical nightmare. The three-camera Cinerama system represented cinema's most ambitious and ultimately doomed attempt to compete with television by making movies literally too big for the small screen. The process required three synchronized 35mm cameras filming simultaneously, each capturing 1/3 of an ultra-wide image that would later be projected by three perfectly aligned projectors onto a massive curved screen that wrapped around audience peripheral vision, creating immersive experience unlike anything before or since. The curved screen problems plagued every Cinerama production, but reached their peak frustration with How the West Was Won's narrative complexity. The technology worked adequately for travelogue documentaries where visible seam lines between the three panels could be ignored, but dramatic scenes with actors moving across the frame created distracting jumps where the images didn't align perfectly. Close-ups became nightmares, as faces would distort grotesquely when crossing between panels, forcing directors to carefully choreograph every movement to avoid these technical disasters. MGM's budget exploded to over $15 million, making it the studio's most expensive production to that point. The cost came from multiple factors: the specialized Cinerama equipment rental, the need to shoot everything 3 times simultaneously, the logistics of coordinating 3 camera crews, and the reality that normal filmmaking efficiencies disappeared when working with such unwieldy technology. Every decision had to account for the 3-panel format, tripling complexity and expense. The roadshow presentation strategy treated How the West Was Won like legitimate theater rather than regular movie, with reserved seating requiring advanced ticket purchase, scheduled showtimes rather than continuous showings, printed programs, an overture before the film began, and an intermission midway through the nearly 3-hour running time. The format couldn't survive despite How the West Was Won's commercial success because Cinerama required too much specialized equipment. Too few theaters could be retrofitted with the curved screens and 3 projector systems, and the technical limitations outweighed the immersive benefits. Within a few years, Cinerama production shifted to single-lens Cinerama that was really just 70mm film projected on curved screens, abandoning the 3-camera process that had defined the format. How the West Was Won became simultaneously the format's greatest artistic achievement and its commercial death certificate. The director chaos: Henry Hathaway, John Ford, and George Marshall. The unprecedented decision to employ 3 different directors for How the West Was Won's 5 narrative segments created both the film's epic scope and its tonal inconsistency. Henry Hathaway directed 3 segments, including the opening river journey, the Civil War aftermath, and the climactic railroad finale. John Ford helmed only the Civil War battle sequence at Shiloh. George Marshall directed the lighter railroad construction segment. This division of labor was necessitated partly by the production's enormous scope and partly by the desire to match different directors' strengths to specific segments. Henry Hathaway's dominant role meant he effectively functioned as the film's primary creative force despite the 3-director credit. His segments bookended the narrative and established the visual style that defined the production. Hathaway was known for his efficiency and no-nonsense approach to filmmaking, which served him well when dealing with Cinerama's technical complications. He pushed actors hard and demanded precision in blocking and camera positioning that the 3-panel format required, creating reputation as demanding taskmaster who cared more about shots than comfort. George Marshall's railroad segment provided comic relief through a lighter touch that contrasted sharply with Ford's darkness, and Hathaway's relentless forward momentum. Marshall specialized in comedy and brought that sensibility to the railroad. Construction scenes, finding humor in the chaos of building the Transcontinental Railroad while maintaining the epic scale. His comedic instincts prevented the film from becoming relentlessly serious, though some critics felt his segment disrupted the overall dramatic flow. Ego clashes were inevitable when three strong directorial personalities competed for creative control, without clear hierarchy beyond Hathaway's plurality of segments. Each director had distinctive style and approach, and the lack of unified vision meant the film felt like anthology rather than cohesive narrative. Production meetings became battlegrounds over tone, pacing, and visual strategy, with each director defending his vision against the other's interference. The uncredited fourth director, Richard Thorpe, was brought in secretly to complete some of John Ford's work when Ford either couldn't or wouldn't finish all his assigned footage. This behind-the-scenes substitution was kept quiet to preserve Ford's legendary reputation and avoid suggesting that the great director had failed to deliver. Thorpe's contribution remained officially unacknowledged for decades, another example of Hollywood's careful image management, even when reality was more complicated. The all-star cast gambled Carol Baker's casting as Eve Prescott, the character whose life spans the film's entire 50-year timeline, represented an enormous gamble on a relatively young actress to carry the narrative weight connecting all 5 segments. Baker had achieved fame through controversial performances in Baby Doll and other adult dramas, making her an unexpected choice for a wholesome frontier woman. Her challenge was aging convincingly from teenage pioneer to elderly matriarch while maintaining character consistency across segments directed by 3 different filmmakers with varying approaches to performance. Debbie Reynolds' Lilith Prescott brought star power and singing talent to the role of Eve's sister, who becomes a dance hall entertainer before finding respectable marriage. Reynolds was coming off the unsinkable Molly Brown and represented safe, wholesome entertainment despite playing a saloon performer. The parade of male stars in relatively small roles represented MGM's strategy of loading the film with recognizable names who would appear briefly but memorably. Gregory Peck played a gambler, Henry Fonda was a buffalo hunter, and James Stewart portrayed a mountain man, all actors whose fame exceeded their actual screen time. This approach justified the all-star billing and provided marquee value across the film's episodic structure, though it created odd dynamic where some of Hollywood's biggest names disappeared after single sequences. John Wayne's 5-minute cameo as General Sherman exemplified the star cameo strategy taken to its extreme. Wayne appears, delivers a few lines about total war, and vanishes, contributing almost nothing to the narrative but adding his iconic presence to the film's promotional materials. His participation demonstrated his friendship with John Ford, who directed the Civil War sequence, and his willingness to support an epic western even in minimal capacity. The brevity of his appearance became running joke. Audiences paid to see John Wayne and got barely more than a glorified walk-on. Carl Malden and Agnes Moorehead as the pioneering parents provided the emotional foundation and character actor gravitas that grounded the spectacle in human terms. Unlike the cameo stars, they appeared in the opening segment with sufficient screen time to establish real characters and relationships. The Deadly River Rapids sequence. Debbie Reynolds' near drowning during the River Rapids sequence represented everything reckless and dangerous about old Hollywood's approach to practical stunts before modern safety regulations and CGI alternatives existed. Reynolds was filming a scene where her character Lilith and her family navigate treacherous rapids in a covered wagon when she became trapped underwater by the wagon's canvas cover. Unable to surface and running out of air, Reynolds genuinely believed she was going to die before rescuers finally pulled her free. The incident traumatized her and sparked serious questions about whether any film was worth risking actors' lives. The stunt coordinator's death during the same sequence remains one of Hollywood's tragic reminders of practical filmmaking's human cost. While exact details were kept quiet by the studio to avoid negative publicity, a member of the stunt team died during the filming of the rapid scenes, crushed or drowned during one of the complex practical effects involving the wagon, horses, and rushing water. The death was hushed up, the family reportedly paid off, and production continued because the schedule and budget couldn't accommodate substantial delays for mourning or investigation. The absence of CGI safety nets meant that every dangerous stunt required real people in real danger facing real consequences. When the script called for a wagon plunging through rapids, the production had to actually send a wagon with actors through rapids, relying on careful planning and luck to prevent deaths. Modern audiences watching these sequences see authentic peril because the peril was authentic. Those were real actors in real water facing real risks of drowning or being crushed by equipment. The visceral power came at unconscionable human cost. Insurance nightmares erupted as Lloyd's of London and other insurers threatened to pull coverage after Reynolds' near death and the stunt coordinator's actual death. Insurance companies understood that the production was taking risks that exceeded acceptable industry standards even for 1960s filmmaking, which was already far more dangerous than modern regulated productions. Spencer Tracy's narration and Bernard Herrmann's score. Spencer Tracy's narration as the film's invisible star provided the connective tissue that unified How the West Was One's episodic structure into something resembling coherent narrative. His voice, gravelly and authoritative, yet warm and familiar, guided audiences through 50 years of westward expansion, providing historical context, emotional reflection, and transitions between the disconnected segments. Tracy never appears on screen, but his presence permeates the entire film, functioning as a combination of historian, storyteller, and moral conscience, reflecting on expansion's costs and triumphs. Recording challenges for Tracy were substantial given the need to synchronize narration perfectly with the three-screen Cinerama format. Normal voiceover recording involves watching footage and recording lines to match image timing, but Cinerama's 3 panels meant Tracy had to account for visual information spread across an impossibly wide field that he couldn't fully perceive in a standard recording studio. The technical crew had to describe what was happening across all 3 panels, while Tracy recorded his lines, trusting that his delivery would match the eventual theatrical presentation's rhythm and pacing. Bernard Herrmann's epic score represented one of the composer's less celebrated but most technically challenging works. Herrmann, famous for his Hitchcock collaborations and Citizen Kane score, brought his sophisticated compositional approach to Western material that could have been treated with generic period pastiche. Tracy's declining health made the recording sessions difficult and poignant, as the legendary actor was clearly approaching the end of his career and life. He was in his early 60s, but looked and sounded much older, worn down by decades of hard living and health problems. His voice retained its authority but carried new fragility that added unintended poignancy to narration about pioneers who had died building America. Tracy would make only a few more films before his death in 1967, making How the West Was Won one of his final major contributions to cinema. Legacy, box office, and the death of epics. How the West Was Won's massive commercial success, earning over $50 million against its $15 million budget, validated MGM's risky investment in Cinerama and epic storytelling, demonstrating that audiences would still pay premium prices for spectacular cinematic experiences that television couldn't provide. The film became one of 1962's highest-grossing releases and remained in theaters for years, through roadshow presentations and subsequent general release, justifying the expense and technical complications of Cinerama production. Academy Award recognition came with 3 Oscars for Best Writing, Story and Screenplay, Best Sound, and Best Film Editing, though the film was notably shut out of Best Picture, despite its commercial success and technical achievements. The Academy recognized the craftsmanship while remaining skeptical about the artistic merit of such sprawling, episodic storytelling. How the West Was Won represented the last genuine roadshow epic in the classic Hollywood tradition before the format died from economic and technological changes. Within a few years, roadshow presentations would become rare special events rather than standard exhibition strategy for prestige films, as audiences rejected the higher prices and scheduled showtimes in favor of regular admission and continuous showings. Cinerama's death as a format came swiftly after its greatest triumph, as the technical limitations, exhibition costs, and limited theater availability made continued production economically untenable. Future Cinerama releases would be shot in single-lens 70mm and projected on curved screens, abandoning the 3-camera system entirely. How the West Was Won became simultaneously the format's masterpiece and its epitaph, the film that demonstrated both Cinerama's spectacular potential and its practical impossibility. How the West Was Won proved that technical ambition and spectacular vision could triumph commercially, while simultaneously demonstrating why such ambition was unsustainable. The three directors, dozens of stars and revolutionary format didn't just make an epic Western, they created cinema's most impressive dinosaur, a magnificent achievement in an already extinct medium. Subscribe to discover more incredible stories behind Hollywood's most ambitious, dangerous, and now impossible productions.